Photo illustration Getty Images. Sarah Huckabee Sanders calls it disgraceful and laughable to speculate, but the president isn't doing her any favors. On Thursday, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders took her place at the podium and, for the second day in a row, sneeringly dismissed questions about the mental health and fitness of her boss, President Donald Trump. "It's disgraceful and laughable," she said. "If he was unfit, he probably wouldn't be sitting there, and wouldn't have defeated the most qualified group of candidates the Republican Party has ever seen." Sanders made this assertion with a straight face despite the fact that only moments earlier, she had directed the assembled members of the press to the video screens flanking her for a special message from a special guest. Yes, the White House beamed into the briefing room an image of the President of the United States, a man who held exactly one official solo press conference in all of 2017, visibly straining to read a list of non-substantive bullet points about the tax bill off a teleprompter, like a somehow even more dystopian version of Apple's famed 1984 commercial. "Trump is an incredibly strong and good leader," Sanders continued, her eyes somehow never betraying the utter panic she must have felt making such a statement in public. "That's why we had such a successful 2017, she added, describing an administration that needed less than a year to become embroiled in a special counsel investigation that shows no signs of slowing down in the foreseeable future. The pointed inquiries about Trump's mental health were precipitated by a forthcoming book on the tumultuous first year of the comings and goings in his White House by Michael Wolff, who himself has taken certain creative liberties before. Excerpts released over the past few days detail, among many other things, the increasing pace of the president's repetitions since taking office. One passage, published in The Hollywood Reporter, portrays a president seen by his inner circle as like a child, except one whose capacity is getting worse, not better. It used to be inside of 30 minutes head repeat, word for word and expression for expression, the same 3 stories, now it was within 10 minutes. Indeed, many of his tweets were the product of his repetitions, he just couldn't stop saying something. White House Communications Director Hope Hicks, attentive to his lapses, writes Wolff, steered the president away from a planned 60 Minutes interview last fall to a friendlier one with Fox News talking head and dependable Trump sycophant Sean Hannity. Another excerpt, this one appearing in New York Magazine, describes the president as a semi-literate person who neither reads nor processes information in any conventional sense. Priebus had his own reservations about taking the job as White House Chief of Staff. He had come out of his first long meeting with Trump thinking it had been a disconcertingly weird experience. Trump talked non-stop and constantly repeated himself. "Here's the deal," a close Trump associate told Priebus. "In an hour meeting with him, you're going to hear 54 minutes of stories, and they're going to be the same stories over and over again. So you have to have one point to make, and you pepper it in whenever you can." Nearly 5 decades ago, the American Psychiatric Association instituted the so-called Goldwater Rule, a code of ethics that prohibits its members from opining on the capacity of individuals they have not personally evaluated. Since then, alleging that a politician is mentally unfit has become taboo in polite society, a tacit acknowledgement of the fact that candidates might otherwise be tempted to weaponize psychiatry in order to undermine their opponents. "You're supposed to win on the merits," the argument goes, not because you managed to spook enough voters into wondering if the other guy might be a lunatic. In the abstract, this democratic safeguard makes sense. In practice, though, when we are governed by a 71-year-old who possesses a rapidly eroding vocabulary and can't stop repeating himself, and who, in the meantime, can credibly threaten a nuclear war on Twitter when he gets bored, this tradition of comedy becomes kind of a problem. It's not like we needed this dumb book to know that something might be amiss, either. If you were acquainted with someone who started behaving as Trump does, concocting elaborate conspiracy theories about their enemies and favoring fast food because they fear being poisoned, you would, at the very least, have some gentle follow-up questions. Because the president is the president, though, his administration would have you believe that the topic is totally off-limits, and that posing such questions about him is a disgraceful and laughable act. With all due respect, what the hell? The country has been on this journey before with one Ronald Reagan, who was 69 years old when he was sworn in, before Trump, the oldest person to do so. His mental capacity was long the subject of innuendo among his political foils, but it wasn't until years later that researchers examining his presidential speeches identified early warning signs of dementia, which include, coincidentally, things like repeated words, rambling answers, and a dwindling vocabulary. As the Times noted, this does not prove that he was suffering from dementia while serving as commander-in-chief, much less Alzheimer's disease, with which he was diagnosed in 1994. But it does function as a reminder that the idea of an elderly president being afflicted by conditions that often affect human beings at his age should not be considered inherently absurd. We're getting closer to having this debate in the open. This week, The Atlantic, a prestigious publication unlikely to throw such accusations out there willy-nilly, published a lengthy feature from senior editor James Hamblin examining whether this president might be in a state of cognitive decline. It is a sober, evidence-based analysis, not a political attack, and it is careful not to offer any sort of diagnosis. It is also, as the author notes, largely an academic question, since even if that were the case, no mechanism exists to compel the president to undergo a formal evaluation. Yes, the 25th Amendment is nestled there in the Bill of Rights, but removing him altogether would be a drastic and unprecedented step. This merry band of political cast-offs who constitute Trump's cabinet do not seem eager to kneecap their benefactor anytime soon. I happen to think that Donald Trump is a bad president, but a bad president is not necessarily an unwell one. However, while Hamblin acknowledges that bias will color any assessment to some degree, it needn't render science useless in assessing presidential capacity. When a mountain of evidence exists that the most powerful person in the world might be, at the very least, impaired in some manner or another, I want to know more about it. If the White House really finds frank discussions of the president's fitness for office to be as outrageous and offensive as it claims, there is a very easy way it could put those questions to rest. But when Trump's public appearances these days consist of Sarah Huckabee Sanders broadcasting clips from the podium and then angrily insisting that there is nothing to worry about, it's okay for us to keep asking more stories like this one.